Good evening. My name is Nadia Zaim, and I will be your moderator for this event. Welcome to the League of Women Voters Forum for candidates running for the office of Judge of the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. This forum is being held in person and live streamed. It will also be recorded and available for viewing on the League of Women Voters of Greater Cleveland YouTube channel, accessible from our website. Our co-sponsors tonight are the Greater Cleveland Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc. and the Ohio Fair Courts Alliance. We thank the Cuyahoga County Public Library Parma Snow Branch for providing facilities for this event. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization, which means we do not support particular candidates or political parties. We do, however, offer voter education, like this forum, and we take positions on issues of importance to voters, where they are consistent with the League's mission. Our two candidates tonight are Amy Imbrogno and Joy Kennedy. Both are running for a 6-year term in the General Division of the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas, commencing January 10th, 2025. The judges of the General Division of the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas handle felony criminal cases, civil stalking protection orders, and civil lawsuits that involve more than $15,000. The General Division also hears appeals from some administrative agencies. Before we begin tonight's forum, let me explain the format. We will begin with 2-minute opening statements by the candidates, going in alphabetical order. We will then ask questions for both candidates to answer. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. We rotate which candidate answers each question first. We anticipate this portion of the forum will be half an hour. At the end, each candidate may make a 2-minute closing statement, beginning with the candidate who went second in opening statements. We ask that those who are here in our audience maintain a respectful silence and avoid expressions of support or opposition to any candidate during this forum. And now I will turn it over to Ms. Imbrogno for an opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. This forum is such an important thing to participate in, and I feel very privileged to be here. It's very, very important to get to know who is running for the positions that you're going to be voting for, especially locally, because they really impact you. So I never in a million years imagined that I would be in an event like this. When I was a child, I was basically told, be humble, don't brag about yourself. I think a lot of girls are told that. So I never thought I would be here running for judge, running for an important position, asking you to vote for me. So if I seem a little bit nervous, that's why. But so when I started law school, which I can't believe how long ago that was, I wanted to do transactional work because I was very quiet. I didn't think I could be a litigator. My first job out of law school, though, was in criminal defense. So I was doing criminal defense, criminal prosecution, and I ended up really liking litigation. It was exciting, it was fun. I could be someone else when I'm up there in court talking to the judge. It gives me a lot of opportunities to use my writing skills. So I got into litigation that way. And I served clients who had money, who didn't have money, and then I moved on to civil litigation. So for the most part, in the past 8 or 9 years, I've been doing civil litigation and doing all different types of civil litigation, complex, simple, working with individuals, working with companies, and learning that there are issues with our system. And so that's why I'm here. I want to be the change that I want to see in the world and fix those issues with our system. And I can tell you a little bit more about that as the questions come in. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you and good evening. Thank you so much to our sponsors this evening. I am pleased to join you all this evening. I am Magistrate Joy Kennedy. I am running to fill an unexpired term that will commence on January 10th, 2025. I'm looking to replace Judge Shirley Strickland Saffold, the longest sitting African-American female judge on the bench. I would like to bring compassionate justice to the bench. My educational background, legal experience, and life experiences have prepared me for this position. I am a proud Cleveland native, I graduated from Shaw High School and attended Hampton University for my undergraduate degree. I earned a master's degree of social work, and I am a licensed independent social worker here in the state of Ohio. As a social worker, I understand the challenges faced by our most vulnerable citizens, and it is through that work that I realized the vital role of the law and compassion and the role that it plays in maintaining public safety while striving for accountability. I graduated from Cleveland State's Law School and for nearly 2 decades worked as a public defender, fighting for justice and ensuring that everyone, regardless of their circumstances, had a fair chance at a better future. As a public defender, I represented children. I represented children charged with delinquency matters and adults charged with lower level misdemeanors all the way up to your highest level felony. I am certified to handle death penalty cases. For the past 3 years, I have been a magistrate and I proudly serve the Cleveland Municipal Court. I have engaged in the power of fairness and the commitment to justice throughout my career. Thank you.
Thank you for those statements. Ms. Kennedy, I'd like to ask you our first question. A judge of a common pleas court hears a wide variety of cases. What different types of cases have you handled? Where do you feel you have particular expertise? And where do you feel you still need to learn?
Thank you. I have served as a criminal trial attorney on or within the common pleas court. I've handled our lower level misdemeanors all the way up to our felony cases. I was certified to handle your death penalty cases, and I worked on many of those cases. In addition to that, I participated in the specialty courts, your mental health court, your drug court, and your veterans court. I represented individuals on your high incident domestic violence cases. So I've had an opportunity to see and experience the clients who come before that court and the clients who needed representation. While I've presided over many cases, the civil cases are the cases that I have presided over, and I could stand to learn more to be a better jurist in our civil area.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Imbrogno, a judge of the common pleas court hears a wide variety of cases. What different types of cases have you handled? Where do you feel you have a particular expertise? And where do you feel you still need to learn?
So I've handled almost every type of case that could become before the court. I have handled murder cases, not death penalty cases, but murders, assaults, civil protection order, OVIs. That would be a municipal court unless that's a felony. But I guess I wouldn't call it a specialty, but what I've worked on most are civil cases. So these are more complex civil cases. I've done some collections work. Those are pretty simple. I've done a lot of cases that involve civil rights and employment issues. There's a lot of dispositive motion briefing, meaning that people move to dismiss and move for judgment based on the evidence that's before them. I have done jury trials, so I have a lot of experience in the rules of evidence and things that translate to the criminal side, but I still do need a little bit more experience on the criminal side of things.
Okay. Thank you. The next question, we'll start with you, Ms. Imbrogno. Can you estimate the number of cases that you have tried? And if you can, give an example of one of those cases.
So if I had to estimate the number of cases I've tried, say probably 7. A lot of my cases dismiss before we get to trial or they settle. I would say that I've tried 7 to completion, 7 or 8-ish. I've prepared for a lot of trials that settle on the courthouse steps. An example of a trial, this is my most recent one. So this was this summer. I represented a railroad in a case that involved some cars that were derailed. So we were the plaintiff. The company that leases land from the railroad was the defendant. And then there was a third-party defendant that the company that leased the land brought in. So it was a little bit complex. There were a lot of parties there were several issues to work out, and we tried that one to a jury. That's just one example.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy, can you estimate the number of cases that you have tried, and please give an example of one of those cases?
Over nearly 17 years, I can estimate over 300 cases that have gone to trial. I have handled those cases from start to finish, and of course prepared for many more to go to trial. My most memorable case, however, is a case in which I was representing a mother. The mother and the father were both diagnosed with a mental health diagnosis and presumed unable to care for their child because of that diagnosis. While pregnant, the mother was not taking medication and displayed violent tendencies. The prosecutor didn't think she could win. We wanted to fight. We fought. We won.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy, I'll start with you with the next question. The roles of a practicing attorney and of a judge are very different. What has been or what do you anticipate will be the greatest challenge in transitioning from the role of an advocate to that of a judge?
Well, I learned early on in my role as a magistrate, which is an appointed judge, that I am no longer the advocate for the client. And that was a difficult transition because as an advocate, you find your position, you stick your feet in the sand, and you fight like there is no tomorrow. But as a jurist, you have to consider both sides. You have to consider the public, and you have to consider the safety, especially in your criminal matters. So the biggest piece has been and will continue to be to remain neutral, to allow both sides to present their cases, and to rule based on the evidence that is before you. I have found that to be challenging, but it keeps me on track, and I must make sure that justice is equally administered, whether it's defense or prosecution or either side. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Imbrogno, the roles of a practicing attorney and of a judge are very different. What do you anticipate will be the greatest challenge in transitioning from the role of advocate to that of judge?
I didn't mention this in my opening statement, but I have been a part-time magistrate in Garfield Heights for 2 years, and I recently started as a part-time magistrate in Willoughby Municipal Court back in June. And the toughest part of it, especially when I was starting out, and I've learned to do better since then, is to keep my people-pleasing tendencies under control. So I was a professional people pleaser for several years of my career, and that was the hardest part when I started out as a magistrate, is remembering, look, I'm not here to please these people before me. I'm here to make sure that justice is served, to make sure that I'm making the right decisions under the law. And I sympathize with the parties when they have a position that I feel bad about and they end up losing. But at the end of the day, I really just have to remember that it has to be the correct decision. I'm not here to please them. So that's been a journey, but I've made a lot of progress.
Thank you. The next question will start with you, Ms. Imbrogno. Describe what you believe constitutes a good judicial temperament and describe why you feel you possess those qualities.
A good judicial temperament is, number one, a judge that cares about the case, shows up, wants to know what the parties are talking about, wants to know what the issues really are. But more importantly, temperament involves how you treat the parties and the attorneys. And there's been several times when I've been called to court, I've had to bring my clients. My client ends up sitting outside for 20 minutes while the staff attorney and the attorneys talk about the case, decide we're not settling yet, and everyone goes on their way. So that to me sounds like the judge isn't really caring about everyone's time, especially the parties who have to be there taking time off work. Temperament also involves having a calm demeanor in the courtroom. And I've been told that I have a poker face. That's one of the things I'm very proud of. So I'm not there in the courtroom yelling at people, losing my temper, getting flustered. If I'm not sure about something, I'll go look it up later and just remain cool.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy, describe what you believe constitutes a good judicial temperament and describe why you feel you possess those qualities.
I look at the thoughtfulness and the compassion in which a jurist rules. Sometimes we're really quick to respond without thinking through the situation at hand. And compassionate justice means understanding when people are before you, they are there for something that they did on their worst day. Now it is up to you to not necessarily judge on their worst day, but how they can be their best. Keep it in mind that people can change and that they're willing to listen and to form or fashion the work that you do so that we can move all the parties along in a positive way. And the thoughtfulness comes because you can't rush to make a decision. The temperament matters, and if you serve with thoughtful compassion, I think that that will serve your constituents very well.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kennedy, what do you perceive to be the greatest obstacle to justice in the Common Pleas Court, if any?
The greatest obstacle to the court, I would say, is access to mental health treatment and screenings. Drug use and abuse is often apparent on its face, but mental health is not. In our courts, many people come and they experience mental health issues, and if they are addressed, I think that lends to a better future, a better outcome in the case, and the reduction of recidivism.
Thank you. Ms. Imbrogno, what do you perceive to be the greatest obstacle to justice in the Common Pleas Court, if any?
The greatest obstacle to justice, in my opinion, is the lack of, and I don't know if it's resources or if people are overwhelmed or if there are jurists who don't care, but the lack of sticking to the rules that are set, timing rules, making sure people are following the rules of evidence, rules of procedure, making sure that when there is access to some kind of service like a mental health service or the veterans docket, that somebody gets put in the right place. The rules are there to make sure that justice is followed and to make sure that people aren't playing favorites, to make sure that the system being put in place is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So the issue with the rules is all-encompassing, and it affects every single issue that goes through the courthouse today.
Thank you. Ms. Imbrogno, what are your views as to whether the Common Pleas Court as a whole deals effectively with racial, ethnic, and gender bias?
So as a someone who is in the court usually before a staff attorney and not a judge at this point, because the judges don't usually hear the civil cases, which is one thing that I'd like to change. I haven't really seen how the judges themselves are dealing with bias in the courtroom, but I do have some examples. I see when people come in and this might be a person of color and the bailiff asks you, are you the defendant in this particular case? And that makes me cringe all the time. When I'm in court, I make sure my bailiffs ask, who are you, why are you here? Not automatically assuming someone's a defendant. That one really bothers me. So that's just one example of, I think we're heading in the right direction, but I think things could definitely be better.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy, what are your views as to whether the Common Pleas Court as a whole deals effectively with racial, ethnic, and gender bias?
I think that individually our jurists are trying their best to recognize and address the racial, the gender, or ethnic biases that exist, but there's always room for improvement. There's a need for continuous training. I think to resolve that issue, one of the things that we've heard and talked about is that sentencing database. A sentencing database would identify gender, race, and other issues, and how sentencing is distributed, or how they are distributed amongst individuals, and we can determine whether or not it is impacted by their race or gender or whatever criteria we choose to look at.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy, I think you've both kind of discussed this already, but can you discuss what have been the most effective ways to improve court procedures and efficiency, and what other methods would you suggest?
Well, we look at COVID and how it changed the landscape of the court. The court can work or move much more efficiently by utilizing telephonic ways to communicate with attorneys and litigants. We can use electronic or operations such as Zoom or other mechanisms to meet with attorneys. And we can continue with the way that we have individuals come to and from court. I think it's case specific. And this change or modification can help reduce the amount of time people spend sitting at the Justice Center. People work, they have childcare needs, medical needs that we should not impact because we're sitting in court all day.
Thank you. Ms. Imbrogno, what have been the most effective ways to improve court procedures and efficiency, and what other methods would you suggest?
So court efficiency is a lot about coming down to the courthouse and people having to sit there and wait, in the example I previously gave. But it's also about making sure that opinions are rendered in a timely manner. This is one of the reasons I wanted to be the change I want to see in the world. I have cases where I've filed a motion and we're waiting and waiting and waiting for months. My clients, the case is very, very important to the client. It's the biggest thing in their life, and they're waiting for a decision, and then they finally get a decision the week before trial, and it's just a one-sentence decision. So number one, I have a specific plan to make sure that I'm informed about what every single case is about, and then that will make sure that I can decide how it's going to be handled, relying on my support staff and magistrates to divide up the work to make sure that different parts of the case go where someone has their particular strengths, and then calendaring deadlines for myself to make sure motions are ruled upon.
Thank you. So other than what you've already discussed a little bit, Ms. Imbrogno, are there any other changes that you would seek, if any, if you are elected to the Common Pleas Court?
Well, I guess I ran out of the time for the last question, so I'll continue on this time. If I'm getting to know what the cases are, I can make sure I'm calendaring deadlines, but I can also look and see, okay, what does this case need to resolve? What does it need to either go to trial, to resolve in a plea deal, to resolve in a settlement? And look at that and then go from there, deciding whether or not the parties are going to have to come in for a pretrial. Most of the time, things can be done telephonically. But if I feel like it's a case where it's getting close to being resolved, it might be worthwhile to have the parties come in. In my experience in the civil world, when the judge actually sits down and speaks with the attorneys in the beginning of the case, that's very effective in getting the case going. It gets the attorneys on discovery instead of everybody just sitting around for the first 3 months not doing anything. So those are some additional changes I would make that go along with the last question.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy, what changes would you make, if any?
That, I guess, goes along with the last question in terms of implementing the in-person, telephonic, as well as Zoom communication mechanisms in the courtroom. I am a lover of organization. This organization allows you to quickly find the data that you're looking for and turn it over or turn it into whatever it is that you desire. I believe in setting future court dates at your second criminal pretrial so that you know the way in which your case is expected to flow and resolve so that you're not going through a criminal matter for extended periods of time. As it relates to your civil matters, I believe in setting your case management schedule for your civil matters early on, at the onset pretty much, so that you know how to resolve those cases. And then it's holding people accountable. I will be cautiously mindful of the time and availability and ruling on decisions, and I would hope to hold those other individuals accountable as well.
Thank you. And speaking more broad picture, Ms. Kennedy, what do you consider the greatest issue the judiciary faces today in Ohio?
Again, the greatest issue is that there's so much trauma in our community, and so many people coming before the court who are dealing with trauma, which leads to the mental health concern. I have a background in mental health and assessments and providing services and treatment, and I know that by getting the help that we need, we can change the trajectory of the lives of the people that come before us. We have specialty courts. We have many of those courts, including a mental health court. But expanding that mental health court and expanding the services will allow us to touch a greater population and reduce recidivism in Cuyahoga County.
Thank you. Ms. Imbrogno, what do you consider the greatest issue the judiciary is facing today in Ohio?
I do have to agree with Magistrate Kennedy that trauma and mental health issues are one of the biggest issues not only the judiciary is facing, but just society is facing as a whole. I hate to copy off of her, but so many problems in society come from generational trauma that's not being addressed. And part of the problem is that we have elected judges here in Ohio, and sometimes judges want to look like they're tough on crime, and they're not appreciating the issues and why they actually are there in the community instead of looking at the root of them. They just want to be tough on crime. And so I think if we had more understanding from people who are voting, from the population as a whole, more compassion about people who are going through these issues that are in and out of the system, then that would be very helpful in making sure our problems are solved.
Thank you. Changing topics a little bit. Ms. Imbrogno, how would you maintain your impartiality and avoid undue influence in the performance of your judicial responsibilities? Discuss campaign contributions and the possible role of special interests in elections.
Is the question how would I be impartial to people who have given me campaign contributions, or is there...
In general, and then also
general?
specifically with a campaign contributions.
All right. So I try to be very aware of my biases. I think everybody has biases. It could be related to something big like race or gender, but often when I find myself in the courtroom, it comes down to sometimes what someone is wearing, or they gave me a funny look. So I try to be very, very conscious of those biases. I know that they are there, and I attempt to identify them as I go along in the courtroom. Now, as far as it goes with campaign finance, I will say I have not gotten very many donations, so I don't think that's going to be an issue for me anytime soon. But again, just recognizing that potential bias is there if somebody who did donate was in my courtroom, considering whether or not I need to recuse myself from the case, and just being honest with myself about that.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy, how would you maintain your impartiality and avoid undue influence in the performance of your judicial responsibilities, including campaign contributions and the possible role of special interests in elections?
Thank you. As a candidate and as a jurist, I am bound by judicial canons. I am bound by the Board of Ethics. I follow rules. I move with integrity. And as a judicial candidate, our limits for fundraising or contributions are limited, specifically to avoid the appearance of impropriety. We do receive donations that help us in our campaign, but we cannot rule or treat anyone differently, whether they gave or did not give. As far as special interests, again, the rules really limit what judges can accept and receive. And so I am bound by the canons, and I will abide by those canons. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy, what do you think could be done to better educate Ohioans about the role of the judiciary? If you are elected judge, what role do you envision playing in educating Ohioans about the role of the judiciary?
I would love the opportunity to go all over Ohio to talk about the role of the judiciary. I think it's important for the constituents to know who the candidates are and who they're voting for or who they elect not to vote for. Judges are closer to the individuals than the President of the United States. They make huge decisions that can impact the lives of our community members on a daily basis. Those are the people we need to get to know, and I would be glad to be a part of explaining to the community and sharing the input that I have.
Thank you. Ms. Imbrogno, what do you think could be done to better educate Ohioans about the role of the judiciary? If you are elected judge, what role do you envision playing in educating Ohioans?
So I think I received a survey from the Judicial College this week about whether or not I wanted to teach CLEs, with continuing legal educations, or classes to people about the judiciary. And that sounds like a great idea. I do like teaching classes and CLEs, but I think what's really important and where I really have a good opportunity as someone who's very introverted and good at connecting on a personal level instead of in a big forum level like we are in right now, is going in and just meeting as many people as I can. And I've been trying to do that throughout my campaign, just going and meeting a lot of people, talking to them, learning about them, and then finding out how the judiciary could affect their lives. So I think most people think that the judiciary is kind of like Judge Judy or Suits or something completely unrealistic. So if I could sit down and connect with people in small groups or one-on-one, that's what I'd really like to do to help people understand what my role in the community is.
Thank you. Thank you to both candidates for participating in tonight's forum. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you again to our co-sponsors, the Greater Cleveland Alumnae Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc., and the Ohio Fair Courts Alliance. Oh, I'm sorry, I did not allow you to make your 2-minute closing statements. I apologize for that. Wouldn't want you to miss out on that opportunity. So I believe we will be starting with Ms. Kennedy because you went second during the opening statement, so you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. 3.5 years ago, I was appointed to serve the residents of the city of Cleveland with dignity and respect. Not only have I done that, but I added compassion and integrity to that list. I would like to share my talents countywide and join the Common Pleas bench. The 29 years as a social worker and the 20 years as an attorney tells you that experience matters. But that's not all as it relates to Joy Kennedy. I am not just a lawyer or a magistrate. I am a proud wife and a football mom. I am committed to my children and to their future. I know firsthand the importance of a strong education system, and I will work tirelessly to ensure that education is a priority not only for my children, but for those who come before the court. In this election, you will have a choice to elect someone who is a dedicated champion for justice, who understands the struggles, the hopes, and the dreams of our community. I am that choice. With your support, I will bring compassion, fairness, and integrity to the bench. I will listen to your concerns, your rights will be protected, and I will ensure, if elected, justice is served for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Imbrogno, your closing statement?
I could probably talk for hours about my background and experiences as an attorney and a magistrate, and I'm sure you don't want to hear all of that. But it's all become a perfect storm. I've recently learned that my background, my talents, my experiences, working in all different types of cases and with all different types of people, have made me ready to be the change that I wish to see in the judiciary. So thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'd ask you to vote for me in the November election. But what I really appreciate about this forum and appreciate about you all being here is that I think Magistrate Kennedy and I and all of us in the room have found out that we all have so much in common. And we might be different parties, we might have different backgrounds, but this has just shown me another example of how we have more in common than we have different, and that whoever wins the election, I hope that we can all work together to make this world a better place. So thank you.
Thank you. Now I can officially thank both of you. And I do want to thank you. As you both noted, this is a very important venue for voters to have an opportunity to hear from both of you, so it's greatly appreciated. And thank you again to our co-sponsors, the Greater Cleveland Alumnae Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc. and the Ohio Fair Courts Alliance. And also thank you to the Cuyahoga County Public Library, Parma Snow Branch, for allowing us to use this room this evening. The video of tonight's forum will be posted on the LWV Greater Cleveland website, lwvgreatercleveland.org. For more information on other races that will be on your ballot in November, please visit vote411.org, our nonpartisan voter guide. Vote 411 is a one-stop shop for election-related information. It provides nonpartisan information, including local and statewide issues, candidates, polling locations, election dates and hours, early voting options, and ID requirements, which are very important this year. If you are not already a League member, if you found this event interesting and worthwhile, please consider joining the League. We're easy to find on our website, lwvgreatercleveland.org. Thank you again, and good night.